Hi, welcome. I'm Meredith McCarthy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and I do these talk times talking about everything to do with clinical hypnosis. I've got a colleague of mine who joins us often on talk time, Teresa Saunders, and we're going to be talking about psychodynamic hypnotherapy and how to unlock hidden emotions, how we work as clinical hypnotherapists and what regression is all about and understanding the unconscious mind. So buckle up. Hopefully you enjoy today's session and you will hopefully at the end of it be curious about what hypnosis is and maybe want to learn more. So if you are, check out the rest of our series that we've done in the past and tune in for more adventures in the future. Hi, Teresa. How are you today?
Hi, Meredith. I'm good, thank you. Nice to be catching up with you on a windy Wellington afternoon.
The weather changes so quickly in our spring, doesn't it?
It does. 4 seasons in one day.
Absolutely. So when we're thinking about psychodynamic hypnotherapy, what springs to mind when you think about it, Teresa?
It's about going into like our subconscious, I guess, or unconscious rather, should I say, holding on to unresolved emotions and hidden traumas, and sort of unpacking that, finding out what is holding people back from being their true selves and reaching their true potential.
I think when people go to a hypnotherapist, they might have seen maybe movies and someone's doing a regression session and Hollywood is kind of going and sensationalizing it sometimes because a person might have this trip to the past and they relive this trauma or uncover something. It's kind of like that for some people, but for other people, it's not quite as dramatic as that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's like all of us, we take things on board and do things in different ways. And a lot also can depend on how your therapist at the time guides you through that journey as well. And support that's given there in your session.
Yeah, for sure. When we think about hypnoanalysis, I think about Freud. So Freud kind of wanted to know why something was happening. And he had a great belief that if you could go back in time and find the root cause, that could be quite interesting. However, the difference is he would stay focusing on the root cause rather than resolving it. So I kind of find that, I guess, hypnotherapy today is more about resolution as well as identifying often the root cause. What are your thoughts?
Oh, for sure. I think it's good in times to go back to that root cause and identify where you had that first I suppose what we'd call it trauma experience, which then got embedded into your unconscious and then reacts and plays and sometimes gets worse as time goes on. But focusing on that cause, we don't need to be focusing on that to resolve that cause. To me, we want to come in and we want to move them forward, not spend years and months, going over the same, what caused it, what was the issue. We want to move forwards.
Absolutely. I think too, many times people may never remember or get to the root cause. So there are really some issues that you'll never know and they'll never know where it all began. And that's okay. I think as hypnotherapists, we can then bring them into what do you need now to move forward? And we can start working in that kind of way. But for today's session, we're talking about, I guess, psychoanalysis and what that means in a hypnotherapy framework. I've got a couple of slides that we can sort of journey through. So hopefully these slides you find interesting. When we're looking at exploring the depths of the subconscious, that it can help really when we're doing that correctly. to create lasting emotional healing and change for our clients. So just we're very solution focused when we're working as hypnotherapists, aren't we, Teresa?
Yes, yep, that's the core thing that we need to be looking at, solution, not going on the past traumas we were talking about and the root cause.
For sure.
So what is the psychodynamic hypnotherapy? It's a blend of psychoanalytic theory and hypnosis, focuses on exploring the unconscious mind, and reveals repressed emotions and unresolved conflicts.
So many times, what kind of things might someone come to us about when we're thinking about that idea of seeking help? What comes to mind?
Again, there can be many things. Anxiety is one of the big ones. Trauma, phobias can be triggered in that way. Yeah.
So when we're kind of looking at someone presenting with a phobia about something, it may well stem from a past traumatic event. Maybe it's a phobia around flying, so they might have had a particularly bad flight, or it could be a phobia around knives, and they might have had an accident or seen an accident from their past, you know?
And I mean, sometimes we don't even realize, and this, I guess, is where we're going back and looking deep into the root cause. It could be something very small years ago that actually happened to us, which we didn't realize at the time was the trigger for our reaction in the future.
And I think when people come in presenting with wanting to resolve it, something's happening in their life where they're thinking, yeah, I'm being held back by this in some way. So that's usually the cause of why they want to resolve it. Maybe it's causing problems where they've had children and they don't want to pass that fear or phobia onto their children in some way. Yeah. So many people will present with all sorts of things, and it is important sometimes to ask those kind of questions. So where do you think it began? How long have you had this? Now, they may or may not remember consciously, but if they want to know, then definitely regression session is a good idea, right?
Yes, yeah. And again, it's being led by your client. Your client's got the answers. Your client knows the path forwards. It's not for us to make that decision before they come in that we're definitely going to be doing timeline regression or shadow work, etc. Yeah.
When we're looking at why the unconscious matters, what does this remind you of when you're thinking about the iceberg?
That for me, like in emotion wise, or even our lives, is so much more that's underneath and inside us, holding us back than what people can see or we see ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. So if we are going along the ocean, we see the tip of the iceberg above there. That's only a little part, and that might represent our conscious mind, right? So everything underneath represents the subconscious, including the ocean itself. You know, it's so vast, and it's part of our way of journeying the world. We're not always meant to be consciously aware of everything all the time. That would be very overwhelming. So our conscious mind pays attention to the things at hand, and our subconscious will assist us to play the programs in the background to deal with those things at hand. However, if we've got repressed emotions, they're probably in a very subconscious place or very unconscious to you. So you might find it influences behavior, and maybe a friend goes, God, you've got to deal with your demons, mate. You know, they might be saying that to you, and you go, what do you mean? Well, every time you do this, you act like a fool. And they go, okay. So quite often a person might behave a certain way, but not even be aware of their behavior when they're doing it.
And this is really where like your hypnoanalysis starts to come in, doesn't it? And we start peeling back all those layers.
Mm. So hypnotherapy can definitely help access that resource and help to heal those emotional states that are maybe problematic. Do you want to go through this, Teresa?
Okay, yeah. So unlocking repressed emotions of hypnoanalysis explores emotional blocks stored in the unconscious, uses hypnosis to access and heal repressed memories, and resolves trauma, anxiety, and emotional barriers. So, did you want to talk a little bit more on some of those points, Meredith?
Yeah. So when we're exploring a block stored in that unconscious place, I may begin a session where I'm looking at how they are dealing with things currently. So I'm very curious, and I go, well, how do you want to be moving forward? And we start to brainstorm what that means for them, and what do you think is holding them back? So I might ask that question, what do you think is holding you back? And they might go, well, I guess I might have been in a situation where I was younger, and that sort of stems from there. And I go, okay, well, would you like to let go of that and resolve that in some way? So I think giving a client the chance to have permission to do that work is important before you actually go and do regression work, because you have to gauge, is the person ready to go and look at that past? Because they may not be. I think as a clinical hypnotherapist, you've got to be walking with the client at their pace, but they may not know that you could do regression as well.
Yes, it's very true. You got to be that client centered, but again, they might not know exactly everything. So that's where your open questions sometimes come into useful, sort of to get that part.
So then I would journey them into explaining hypnosis, what it is and what it isn't, especially if you've never done hypnosis with that client. But to be fair, a lot of times I would not do a full regression session in the first session with my client. So we've got to create a level of trust, rapport with the client before we sort of journey into that. You'll probably find you get way better results the second time, because they've got to meet you, you've got to normalize how the session feels, and they're more involved and trusting the next session to do deeper work if it is about deep-seated trauma and issues that stem right back to perhaps a problematic time for them. So gauge the client. Some clients just want to rip into it and get it done. However, just be sensitive that they may not realize what the process is really about, and you might get some resistance if they're not quite trusting you fully yet for whatever reason, or trusting the process.
Yeah, and I think that's good. Again, hypnotherapy is quite a quick therapy to use to help resolve traumas. As you say, we're solution based, but not to go in too fast, too quickly, because that can actually have not the desired results that your client or yourself are actually wanting. As you say, that rapport is really important.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're kind of looking at that idea of using hypnosis to access and heal repressed memories, we're not just taking someone back to relive it all. I think that's probably a false understanding.
I think, sorry.
Yeah, no, you go.
So I think so. And also, I'd like to sort of say is that we're not changing the past. We're not deleting what happens to somebody either. And I think that also is a false or misconception that people have about hypnotherapy, that if we go back in time, we're erasing the event.
Yeah, a lot of times clients want to forget a relationship ever happened. It's not really healthy to do that, because you're just repressing something. However, we can change the emotion that it has triggered, so we can change the emotional attachment you have with that memory, and we can play around with the memory enough that it plays differently. It's like wisdom is very powerful, so when we look back with wisdom lens, we can see maybe the growth or the gift of that moment rather than only seeing the wounds of that moment, and that can really help empower a client. What are your thoughts?
Definitely, even in the darkest trauma events that happen, although it's hard at the time, there is a lesson to be learned, and it's growth for us to move forwards. Not that I'm saying that anyone should go through any of those dark traumas or anything, but with hypnotherapy we can help people move forward from that, see it in a different light, and by addressing different emotions, we can, if anything like that happened again, we can change our feeling of how we would deal with that.
Yeah. So there are two things that we do if we're going to do regression, and that might be age regression. So we take them back through the stages and ages that they're in, and we might even deal with a number of events or a number of things through the timeline of experience. But it also could be just going back to the source of where it began. So that could be anywhere, and that's where people might spontaneously regress into past life. It can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, there are many people who have mixed feelings about past lives and whether they exist or not. But as a hypnotherapist, it's not for me to say whether they exist or not. It's for me to work with what the client has. And so we're dealing with, okay, well, let's deal with it as if it happened. So we're dealing with it in a mindful, gentle, sensitive way.
Yeah, and this is where I love the part where we can actually get our client to talk to their child self and the now, and thank it for the amazing job it's done for protecting them and that sort of thing. And I just love that, watching how people evolve and change from having that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that I use a lot with my regression sessions is getting that adult self to talk to the little self or the younger self, and passing that wisdom on or supporting that little self in some way. And that can be extremely creative for the client too. So it doesn't need to be really strongly scripted, but the client needs to be in charge of what their little self needs or what they want to say to their little self. So if you're hopping in as a therapist and say, how about you tell your little self that they did the best with what they had at the time? Well, actually, you're getting very prescriptive then, and you're coming into that client's world too much. So we need to be a bit careful about leading the client versus supporting the client.
Yep, letting the client have that conversation with itself, the self, and doing what it needs to. If that means the client wants to give its younger self a hug, then go for it. Do that. That's what it may need. But that healing can be really profound.
Yep. And there's healing beyond time as well. So we don't always have to do regression to a point in time. It can just be to the source, wherever that is in time, and we can deal with it in the here and now. And we can ask the subconscious to directly, we can say, is there a part of your subconscious that is ready to change that programming today? And you might get them to show with their finger yes or no. So that's idiomotor signals. We've got another podcast done on those and how we work with those. But in short, we can get a person to nod their head or non-verbal sort of answers rather than having to know everything that the client is thinking or saying out loud.
For sure, especially in some trauma events, your client might not feel safe or want to even reveal and speak that out. I mean, sometimes that's a good thing for them actually to speak out. But again, we're moving forward with what the client wants. So that's a great way of conducting your session.
Yeah, for sure. When we're kind of looking at that idea of I guess working with clients, they're all a little bit different, and confronting the shadow is another part of what we do as well. So based on Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self, uncovering the repressed desires, fears, and emotions, and it helps to integrate hidden parts of the self for healing. So we can talk to different aspects of that client, and we can really guide them through. So that's not necessarily always regression. So it can just be, yeah, as you are now, is there a part of you that feels whatever? Can I ask that part to step forward? And so you can start to work in that way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I enjoy this, and there's a huge scope and range of different tools that we have as hypnotherapists that we can work on this level. I mean, just as human beings, we wear very many different masks throughout our day. You know, when we go to the school to pick up the children, we behave in a certain way to what we would do at office or at home. And, you know, sometimes we have that shadow side, which we don't particularly want to acknowledge or show others, but to move forward, we sometimes need to access them and recognize those shadow parts of ourselves and work on how we can change that and why we behave in that way to let us live our full potential.
For sure. For sure. You know, when we're looking at that idea of work with clients, there are so many methods that we can work with them in the way of dealing with the unconscious or subconscious. It's kind of the same. Like some people say unconscious, some people say subconscious. I think people tend to not always use unconscious because it could be misunderstood that they're not, like they're out cold and they're not going to remember that aspect. And I think subconscious is just suggesting there's something below the conscious mind that is sort of there, like the iceberg analogy. When we think about unconscious, it's in anything that you're not conscious of right now. Like if I asked you, how does your right foot feel? And suddenly you're pointing your mind to your right foot. So now your right foot's become more conscious. You're more aware of your right foot, but it was there all along. You just weren't pointing your mind to it. So it's anything you're not thinking about right now is the unconscious stuff. And the stuff that you're thinking about right now or aware of right now is your conscious stuff. So that's a good thing. So when we say unconscious, kind of the same thing. It's just, yeah, slightly different wording.
Yeah, for sure. And we do use our unconscious for so many more things than what we actually realize. We just go on automatic pilot, don't we?
We do. Yeah. I mean, when we're kind of looking at why to choose, you know, the psychodynamic hypnotherapy model, it is really useful to heal the deep-rooted emotional issues. I was dealing with a little 8-year-old the other day, actually, and she came in because she's petrified of spiders. And she's also really scared of scary movies. Not that she's ever seen one, but apparently her cousin has told her all about the scary movies.
Don't you just love the big cousins?
Yep. So when I'm dealing with her, I'm saying, well, okay, how long have you felt like that? And apparently what occurred for her is that she was in Australia and she saw a redback spider, and she had not seen anything like that. And she got a really big fright. And from then on, she didn't want to play on the trampoline. She didn't want to go outside and play because she was really scared that she's going to come across another spider. And it just amped itself up and she got really anxious. So she came in, she was ready to deal with it, and we were able to go through a journey and change that story. But when we're working with it, I already know, okay, that's the source. But her imagination was a key part of making it bigger, right? So she was imagining...
Excuse me.
That's all right. She was imagining things getting really bad in her mind. So I thought, right, we can ego strengthen her imagination. We can say, isn't it amazing how you are in charge of your imagination, aren't you? And she said, yes. And I said, and isn't it amazing how powerful it is? This little client, I got her to stand up, and we did a muscle test exercise. So I get the client to stand in front of me, and I say, is it okay if I put my hand on your shoulder? And is it okay when I count from 1 to 3 that I push with my 2 fingers on your other hand that's stretched out like this? That you have to resist up as soon as I go 1, 2, 3, I'm going to push down, you're going to resist up for me. So I go 1, 2, 3, and we push it down. She's really, resisting up. And then I go, okay, we're going to do it again. 1, 2, 3. Yep, same resistance. I said, okay, I want you to think about a time where you felt really good about something. It was really fantastic for you. You don't have to say it out loud, just bring it to your mind. You got it? Yes. 1, 2, 3. Boom, same resistance. Okay. Then I said to her, so I want you to go back to that time where you felt scared about that spider and how that affected you. Got it? 1, 2, 3, boom. Her whole hand went down and she had no strength. And I said, that's how powerful your thoughts are. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the way you're thinking about it. Would you like to do that today? So it's all about permissions, and it's all about getting that client to understand how powerful they are, how just like that they can change the channel. And so a lot of the work that we're doing with fears or phobias, or work with psychoanalysis, just understanding where it was, but what's happened since. Why is that client decided that it's really important to build that fear so big that it's destroying their ease of life? And so when they can see, hang on, I want an ease of life. I want to feel better. I don't want to feel that way anymore. That's where they're really ripe for change. So that's where a client will present for help at that point. So already half the work's done because the intention's there that they want and they desire change. I just love working in that way, and it's so quick. But at the end of the session, I said to her, now, on a scale of 1 to 10, which is the SUDS scale, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really confident that when you see a spider next time, you're going to feel really good. Where are you now? And she goes, a 10. I'm like, wow, that was cool. So during the journey that we did with her, we unpacked about the trampoline. We unpacked that she liked fairies. We unpacked that all of these magical things. So I took her on a journey, and she had a teddy bear within this journey that was her magical positive anchor. So within the journey, she had the teddy bear, and she came across a spider, and the spider was called Daisy, and it had a mother called, I can't remember what I named the mother, but anyway, the mother liked the name Daisy, so that's what she chose. And Daisy gets really tired sometimes of getting wet feet. So I gave the little girl special powers that she could create little gumboots to give to Daisy. And so she did. And then, of course, Daisy was happy and they were friends. And she left and went to this other space where there was a big trampoline, but it was as big as a field, like huge trampoline. And she started jumping on the trampoline, and then she heard these little voices, and underneath the trampoline were a village of spiders going, hey, stop tramping on our trampoline house. We're quite happy here. Can you go somewhere else? There's plenty of room. And she agreed, yes, I'll go somewhere else. And she goes to the other end. She happily bounces on the trampoline. She realizes that the bear's gone and she was fine anyway. And so there's all these lovely things that you can guide a little child through. Now, to get the child to do the same level of work as an adult, where they're owning all the imagery and things, they don't often have enough scope yet to work in that way. Whereas if I was dealing with an adult, I wouldn't give them such a prescribed story, but I'm utilizing some of the anchor points that I've heard within the session when I'm gathering information, and I'm allocating that to a different emotional outcome during that session. Because she's only 8, she's in a trance most of the time, so they love story time. And when you take them in and they are the character, the hero of the story, and they see the happy ever after, it really does change things quite quickly. So children are wonderful when you're using metaphors, you're using stories, and that they can relate to them. So we talked about that, and that really shifted a whole lot for her. Obviously, was a lot more involved in that journey that I'm not sharing all of that today. But when we're looking at understanding the psychodynamic nature of, like, where did it begin, what's happened since, and how do we resolve it, we've got to future pace that client into the future, seeing that client be successful.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is what I just love, the beauty of hypnotherapy. The mind is so powerful, and the imagination, the mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So we can work on that level and resolve and give solutions quite quickly to people.
For sure. Yeah. So, when we're kind of looking at that idea of why to choose, psychodynamic hypnotherapy, a lot of clients have that in their mind anyway, that you're going to do regression with them because of Hollywood. And they might be disappointed that you didn't. That could be another part. But it also helps to resolve that deep repressed trauma and maybe repressed memories. Now, talking about repressed memories, sometimes we need to be, well, all of the time actually, we need to be careful that we're not involving false memories here, that the person is allowed the spaciousness to come to that all by themselves, that you're not prescribing what they're going to remember. Yeah. So this is important, that we're not accidentally popping in strange memories. And that can also be in your inquiry. So if you said, oh, do you think you've had some trauma in the past? Well, they're going to find trauma.
That's right. Yep.
Even if you said, well, do you think your upbringing was positive or negative? Now, that's a really broad question. Like, whose upbringing has all been positive and all been negative? It's going to be a mixture of all of those things, because we're humans. So when we're kind of looking at that idea of how you even inquire about their past, you've got to be very thoughtful as a practitioner to sort of choose your questions well.
Yes, for sure. And again, that comes with learning through the school. You're sort of helped go through that stages, and with practice, it becomes more of a natural process.
Absolutely. So when we're kind of looking at the idea of regression or shadow work, or looking at that root cause, whatever way that you do, it's very powerful. The client at the end, I mean, I had this other guy the other day, and his response was, wow. He got to talk to his little self, and it was profoundly moving for him, and people are coming out that with tears of happiness, and something left them. And another client today, we were doing work, and she was saying, I feel like I'm beaming. I've got this wonderful aura about me, and I've got this red all around my heart. And it just feels like I've let go of something. And it was really lovely for her to have that experience. And this was regression work. It was taking her right back to the point of conception, and moving through and looking at all the things she had achieved naturally, and also allowing her the opportunity to give back some things that don't necessarily belong to her. And her background was her father was extremely critical of what she was doing in life as a job, was not approving of her at all, and would remind her of this over and over and over again. So she never felt good enough. And she was attracting relationships that weren't great either. So she would end up with guys who weren't really treating her well. And so this is the thing, when you're doing this kind of work, it breaks a cycle of abuse. It helps a person really move forward, love themselves, and have that respect for themselves so they can thrive in life.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know about you, but I feel very honoured that somebody trusts me enough and has that rapport to be able to share that with me, and then just to see that empowerment they've got from that session or those sessions to move forward and have a better life.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. On that note, we're kind of coming to the end of our talk time for today. So I hope you've got something valuable from it. If you have any questions, please, drop us a line in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk about all things to do with hypnosis. So if there is a burning question that you have, please, add that to the comments for us to talk to in the next one, or maybe another time. Are there any other things that you would like to add to today's talk time, Teresa?
No, I think you've said them all. Just again, it's just to reinforce, click the like, share and subscribe button to our YouTube channel. Please interact with us. We're here to help those get an insight about what hypnotherapy is and what it's to be a hypnotherapist. So yeah, engage with us. It would be great.
Now, we have another juicy one for next week coming up, so tune in, please. And if this is your flavour, you've thought about becoming a hypnotherapist. If you have and you're not quite sure where to start, check out the school, nzach.ac.nz, and we've got lots of information there. I'm working on making it more accessible globally. So if you are keen, give me an email, call me, whatever you want to do, and we can discuss what's involved. But there's lots of information there that you can tune into. We have a portal with lots of little goodies, great information, and client recordings that I'm not necessarily releasing here on this platform, but you get to hear those on that platform with a breakdown of what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you are keen on training to become a clinical hypnotherapist, check us out. So on that note, thank you again, Teresa, for being with me today. It's always nice to have a chit chat.
It's a pleasure, and I look forward to next week. Thank you, Meredith.
Cool. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.